There was an admission from some of the Conservatives yesterday that there was a mistake that had been made. Presumably, that's not enough for you.
Well, he admitted there's a mistake, but what you do when you make a mistake is you apologise. And we didn't get an apology from Stephen Barclay yesterday. We haven't had an apology from the Prime Minister, even though he was pressed to apologise several times. And I think the problem is here, it's not just about the Paterson scandal. We've seen a pattern of behaviour now. A year and a half ago, you'll remember we had the West Ferry scandal, where Robert Jenrick admitted taking on an unlawful decision to help a Conservative Party donor dodge £50 million in tax. Then we had the crony contract scandal during the pandemic, with 36 billion or more being siphoned off to companies and businesses that had connections with the Conservative Party, the Greensill lobbying scandal with David Cameron, and now this. Now, we need an apology at least for this, but we also need to be putting in place much more robust measures to prevent any repeat. And what we've called for is an anti-corruption and anti-cronyism commission to look at how the rules need to be tightened up to prevent MPs from being paid by lobbyists to then serve corporate interests rather than serve the interests of the great British public.
Get an apology from the Prime Minister. You're not going to get a commission. He said yesterday he had nothing more to say. He's got through this, hasn't he?
Well, I mean, the problem with all of this is it's eroding trust and confidence in the British system. And I think what really upsets the British public here is that this offends against the sense of fair play that is part of how this country operates. It's deeply un-British to carry on in the way that the Prime Minister is behaving. And as I said earlier, it's not just the Paterson scandal. There's a pattern of behaviour that we've seen repeated again and again and again. This government has no regard for the rules, even the rules that they write themselves. And the British public do not want to see government in this country carried on in that way.
This is a bit of an opportunity for you and for your party, isn't it, to position yourself as being politicians who we can trust. How are you going to try and do that?
Well, I think the key to all of this is to get an independent commission to look at the rules. You know, a commission on anti-corruption and anti-cronyism. Given everything that's gone on over these past 2 years, we need to tighten the rules so the British public can have confidence in this system. You know, we've got a Prime Minister who appears to be quite happy to enable corruption, and that can't go on. We've got a leader of the opposition in Keir Starmer, a former public prosecutor, who spent his professional life locking people up for wrongdoing of that kind. And you know, I'm looking forward to seeing Keir take Boris on in the chamber tomorrow for Prime Minister's questions, to hold him to account for his refusal to acknowledge what he's done wrong and put in place the appropriate measures to put it right again.
Basis, Steve, that the government has got through this. I mean, what are you looking to next? Is it the issuing of COVID contracts? Is that the next thing where Boris Johnson needs to have a think about how he's going to handle it?
Well, I mean, contracting in general seems to be a problem now, but we'd like the Prime Minister to rule out giving Owen Paterson a peerage, something that he's refused to do so far. I mean, we have to question why has Rob Roberts, the Conservative MP, been let back into the Conservative Party after he was found to have been sexually harassing a junior member of staff. It seems like this government has no regard for standards, and yet standards underpin the confidence that people can have in our democracy. So this really does go to the heart of the problem. We cannot have corruption at the heart of decision making in Parliament, and we have to take action now to put that right. I think a fully independent commission to look into this whole question would be a very sensible way forward. And in terms of the contracting and the way some of that's been happening, well, my colleague Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, has proposed an office of value for money to look at how contracts are awarded. I think all of these things would help reassure the British public that fair play rather than corruption is at the heart of how our democracy operates.
I mean, if Boris Johnson has got his telly on, he's watching you right now, what's the message?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you very well. What was that question again, please?
Steve, I was just wondering that if Boris Johnson happened to be watching you right now, what is your message to him?
My message to Boris Johnson is apologise for what you've done wrong and work with us to put it right again. This is something that could bring the whole of the House of Commons together. The vast majority of us want a system that the public can have confidence in. It's the Prime Minister who's disregard for the rules is poisoning the well right now, and we really need to come together to put this right.